Hey there, and welcome to the Event Crushed podcast. Each week, we'll be chatting about all things wedding industry, entrepreneurship, and how to crush it in life and business. I'm so glad you're here. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, happy Friday, and welcome back to the Event Crushed podcast. This is your host, Becky, and I have another exciting guest today. I have just been loving all of the interviews that I've been doing, and it is so fun to chat with so many incredibly talented, unique, inspiring individuals in the wedding industry. And so Meghan Ely of OFD Consulting is no exception. She's actually somebody that I have been following for a long time. I got to see her speak at Wedding MBA last year, and she is just a wealth of knowledge on all things PR for wedding pros. And she's also a certified wedding industry professional, and she is regularly honored by the Public Relations Society of America. She's also a past national president of WIPA, and NACE has also honored her as a Speaker of the Year. So she does lots of speaking in the wedding industry. She has OFD Consulting, where she works with wedding pros on publicity and public relations and all of that good stuff. So we had a great conversation, and I think it will be really insightful for you. So with that, let's welcome Meghan to the show. Well, hello, Meghan. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Of course. Yeah, this is honestly a dream. So I know you as the PR queen for wedding pros, but if any of my listeners are not familiar with you, Meghan, would you just share a bit about your background and how you work with wedding pros through OFD Consulting?
Absolutely. So yes, wedding publicity has been my life for 15 years. I have been in the industry over 20. I was in receptions prior, but 15 plus years ago, I started OFD Consulting. So we are a wedding PR agency, small but mighty group of us, where we focus on getting people published in a variety of ways. And so I'm also a speaker because you and I have connected over at Wedding MBA. So I travel all over helping people really teach them how to represent themselves, give themselves a voice in the industry, but I'm also a big association girly as well. So you can find me, supporting WIPA, NACE, NSBWP, and things like that. On the side, I like to tell people, maybe PR Queen's what people know me from, but one of the best introductions I got was that I'm a Grey's Anatomy historian. So if any of those questions come up, just feel free to toss them my way.
I love it. That's amazing. So I watched Grey's Anatomy years ago and got super into it. And then my mom just started watching it over the last year, and she just got so sucked into it and hooked. And every time I talked to her, she would tell me about what was happening in Grey's Anatomy.
Oh my God. What you need to do, side note, and no, this is not a Grey's Anatomy podcast for those listening. Send her a list of the must-have episodes that you have to watch alongside her, because my nieces are rewatching it, and I gave them strict rules about the ones that I'd have to come watch with them.
I love that. Oh, it's a great show. Okay, well, thank you for just sharing a bit about yourself. So today we're talking about PR for wedding pros and publicity and all of that good stuff. And so I kind of wanted to start with any misconceptions that you have seen that wedding pros might have about PR, or any kind of incorrect beliefs that might be floating around out there.
Sure. Well, we can go in two different directions. I think a common misnomer is it's way too overwhelming for me to do. And the fact of the matter is it's an overwhelming concept, but it is something step by step that people can, I'm hoping to dispel that myth at the end of the day. So there's that side of it. But there are some people as well, a lot of people who think, one, you have to know all the right people and you have to pay for it. Those are the big things. And what I tell people is this: listen, on the paying side, that is called advertising. And yeah, there are paid advertorials out there. There are sneaky press features that people are sharing that they actually paid for. Yes, but there is a whole world of earned media where people can be quoted, they can be published, they can do podcasts, and there's not an exchange of money there. And so it's important people to know that. When it comes to relationships, like I say to people, listen, yeah, it's great to know and build the trust in the relationship with these editors and writers. Will they keep coming back if you're someone that they can trust to give them, great resources, great photos, great? Yeah, absolutely. Like I would never deny that. But it's not a requirement. It certainly helps move things along. I mean, we've worked with some writers 8, 9, 10, 12 years, and it's a great relationship. But we all start somewhere. And the fact of the matter is, although I'm not a member of the media, so I can't speak on their behalf, but based on my observation, these guys, they're always on deadline. They're always still looking for great resources. Anyone's in a position to be able to jump in. You don't have to be best friends with someone to see results.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the money aspect of it, because I feel like there is that perception that like anything that's paid, or like assuming that it is all paid and that there aren't, other ways to get featured.
100%.
Okay, so I would love if you could just share with us. So maybe, some of my listeners have never really looked into getting published or submitting weddings or any kind of PR. So what could PR potentially do for them? Like, what are they missing out on, basically?
Sure. I come on here knowing that it's a great responsibility of mine to say, hey, listen, I know you're super busy. It's either your busy season or it's engagement season or it's the downtime and you're still very busy. And I'm saying you need to add this to the mix. But the fact of the matter is getting published it has a strong ROI for people when done well. And so public relations, the idea of being published, whether it's quoted, getting featured in weddings, things like that, there are a number of different ways to look at it. First and foremost, what I tell people is it's one part of that promotional umbrella to increase brand awareness. So for those who, I was just talking to a group of wedding shops, like wedding gown shops recently, and I said, if you are expanding, if you are moving buildings, you're opening up something like PR and getting stories written about you, it's a fantastic way for people to learn more about you. Like that's the first thing. But in addition to this, we're in this sort of interesting time period where there is a generational shift, and we're seeing, I'm sure you've been hearing about, these Gen Z, all this. And the fact is social proof, that sort of everybody else is saying you're great factor is going to be huge. So not just testimonials, which are awesome to have on your site, but that kind of sexy as seen in, Brides, Martha, some of the great local publications, niche publications, and so forth. In addition to that, and I'll be the first to tell you, I am not an SEO guru. I know great people who can do SEO, but what I know they can at least begin to tell you is on top of a solid strategy, one of the things that they're looking for are great backlinks back to your site. So, if I get quoted in the New York Times, which I was recently, I get a link back to my site and that helps move me up on Google. So for those who are really aiming to play that Google game, making sure that you're participating in press where you can get backlinks does make a difference. Finally, if I may say real quick is, I know a lot of people out there probably listening saying, well, PR, I live off of referrals. And I'm like, that's fair. Like statistically, Google and referrals are the biggest ways you're going to get business. And there are many other great, proven strategies too. But imagine that you're someone who wants to get in more with the planners and you do a wedding with a planner and you do a great job with them and so forth. What's nice is at the end of the day that if you've done a great wedding with them and then you get them published, that keeps the conversation going. Like that keeps that relationship going. The couple, you did an amazing job for them on their wedding day. Well, imagine 6 months later when you get to let them know they've been in Inside Weddings magazine or Destination I Do. So it's all about maintaining and increasing and really, improving upon those relationships as well. So PR touches on a lot of the ways that we find our couples.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of just that continued relationship because it is so exciting to be able to reach out to like the whole vendor team after a wedding gets featured and being able to share that with them. And then they're excited and everyone's sharing it. And it's definitely super great for just strengthening those bonds. And with the couple too, of course, they're obviously going to be thrilled.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you share a little bit more about just some specifics of what PR could look like? So you've touched on, submitting weddings and different things, but could you just share, a little more about other ways that, different ways they can get published?
Absolutely. Well, I think a lot of people, the low-hanging fruit, they think about the wedding features, right? They think about gorgeous events, submit them to blogs and publications, and that is one way to go. But that really benefits the planners, photographers, venues, and florists the most. So most people I don't advise outside of that. But you can also get quoted. Like you can actually, in all those great like Brides or The Knot and these great articles that are asking about tips for winter weddings, what are the latest trends, all of those things, people can get quoted in those, and that's a great way to get press. There's also styled shoots, which I could go on and on about. Sometimes they're a better fit for others but what have you. But that is a viable way for some people to get press too. There's also TV, radio, podcasts like that. TV's not my medium per se. Podcasts would be more mine. It just depends on the audience. It's another great way to get press is to go ahead and this is very meta, but to do podcast interviews. There's, so many great options out there, B2B and B2C. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't share that in some opportunities, there are ways for people to have their company written up about. Now, that is going to be less likely. It's going to be more likely at the local level, or if they're offering something that's just really unique, no one else is seeing it, and so on and so forth. When I think unique, I think about my friend Andrew, who does like literal watching of weather for weddings. He's not a meteorologist. He's like a wedding weather concierge. And he got featured. This was on his own. I take no credit on this, but he was featured in the New York Times. Like that is unique enough that it would make sense that something like that would be covered. So PR really runs the gamut in terms of so many different ways you could be featured. And not everything fits for everybody. But the good news is there are enough opportunities for you.
Definitely. It is really surprising to me because I think a lot of wedding pros, when they're thinking through their marketing and just getting found by couples, like that's not, I feel like PR usually isn't kind of the thing that's at the top of their mind. It's more like social media and their, Google ranking, which you brought up the backlinks and like how important that can be. And I think that's something that we just really don't even think about. You kind of mentioned earlier, but do you have any other ideas like why PR isn't the first thing that comes to mind and like why should it be?
Sure. I think PR is not the first thing people think about because it's intimidation. There's an intimidating factor to it. The fact is social media, a lot of us, even though social media is very hard to do strategically for your business, most of us are on social media already. So the learning curve is left. So most people are not doing PR day to day in their personal life. So there is an intimidation factor. Again, part of it goes back to your original great question about the myths. And a lot of people think, well, I have to pay the piper. I have to know everybody. And it's like, well, no, that's not the case. So, but at the end of the day, like I said, I think it really does come down to how can PR augment other promotional strategies that I'm working on.
Definitely. And another thing, I know you mentioned this before, but getting featured and getting quoted in these publications, like really boosts your authority as a wedding expert. And so I think to couples who are looking for a potential planner or a photographer, if they see that they're featured in a big publication or like that they were quoted sharing wedding advice, I think that's a huge thing that would make them go, oh, this person like knows what's up. Like they know their stuff.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. What it comes down to is that authority, that social proof that everybody else is saying I'm great. Like that's what's going to be really important because at the end of the day, we find out from Splendid Insights, which is a wonderful resource. Shout out. Thanks, Splendid. But what we find is that when it comes to what couples are looking for, it's your portfolio, of course, but it's also going to be personality. They just want to know kind of the prestige connected to that as well. All of that's going to be very important.
Okay, so for someone who has never jumped into the world of PR and this is like all new to them, maybe they do feel intimidated. Like you mentioned, it can kind of feel a little bit intimidating at first. What are some first steps that they can take?
It's starting small, right? And I would always say the first thing you can do, which is really to ask yourself, what has to happen for this to be a success? Like if I'm going to put time into this versus everything else I'm doing and add to my busy schedule, what am I looking for? Dig into your goals. What stands out? Is it going to be, do I make sense to do wedding features? Do I have an interest in styled shoots? Does it make more sense I get quoted? Do I want links back? So really narrowing that down. Also better understanding what outlets make the most sense for you. Now, a lot of people will say, well, they all want Vogue and Vogue is amazing. But Vogue has very particular needs. Unless you're working with the celebrity set, it can be far more difficult or like certain fashion and so forth. So what I tell people is narrow it down to what the realistic goals are. What's going to make the most sense to move the needle for your business? From there, there's a few different ways you can go. If you want some easy wins, there is, it was formerly called Haro, Help a Reporter Out. It's now called Connectively. There's also another free site. It's called Quoted, Quoted. And, these are free and low cost opportunities where journalists will reach out and ask for sources on a variety of different publications, different articles. They already have articles they're working on. Now, are they in the wedding space? Not necessarily, but it could be lifestyle, business, and so forth when it comes to that. So the best thing you can do is really look to these free, low-cost opportunities to start pitching yourself to articles that already exist.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up Quoted, because that is something that I found out through my business coach and that I started using. I haven't picked up any features in it yet, but it makes it really easy because they have, reporters basically pitching requests from The Knot and from, all kinds of wedding publications. And then you can just pitch them basically. It's been fun to just see all of those and to potentially get featured there.
It's a great way to dip your toes into it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So do you have any additional advice or thoughts for those of us who are just looking to, get our feet wet with this? I admit that in the earlier years of my business, I did focus a lot on getting featured and had all kinds of weddings and styled shoots featured in different blogs and even some print features more locally, all kinds of stuff like that. And then it kind of just has dropped off these last several years. I don't know. I think just my priorities have been elsewhere. But I will say, I do know how important it is, and it is something I'm wanting to get back into. So any other final advice that you would share with me and my listeners?
100% with that. So I really do think that when it comes to where to go from here, when it comes to PR, one of the best things you can do, and this is going to be it's going to sound like mundane advice, but you got to trust me on this. It's getting organized. And so taking it step by step. So if you are someone where wedding submissions really speak to you, then let's go ahead and look to the weddings in the last 6 months and the ones ahead and think to ourselves, what are the ones that are the most original? What are the ones that look the most different? The ones that really kind of stand out, and come up with a plan, identify them, mark down who the photographer is. If you, the royal you, are not the photographer, to, make plans to connect with them. Or maybe it's just easier for you to set up I'm a repeatable task girl myself. So setting up some sort of repeatable task where every quarter you look through your weddings and decide what might be a fit. If you are someone out there who says, I'm more of a talker, I want podcasts, then go ahead and maybe once every couple of months, pick up another podcast that you can listen to and really determine what's going to be the right fit for you, and start looking into the opportunities for pitching. But just getting yourself organized, even if you can set aside 20 to 30 minutes a week and give yourself some side activities to work on, forward is forward. That's a Peloton quote, but forward is forward, and it really does make a difference.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I think really that is what it comes down to for me personally, is just getting organized and setting aside the time. And I could really easily go into a sauna and just create a repeated task, like you said, to remind myself to go through the recent galleries and which ones would be a good fit for submission. This would be, see, you just have me thinking, this would be such a great task that I could have my VA help with too. She could kind of go through and she could help me with submissions and that kind of thing. I don't know why I didn't think about that, but that's a great idea.
Well, you can. And I think that's a big thing. One of the questions I get is, how can I outsource it? Yeah, you can work with your internal team. There are pros and cons to that. Obviously, to have someone you trust to work on things to get you organized, they're going to have to build relationships as much as versus bringing in a publicist who would actually already have some of the relationship. So you just kind of have to balance and decide, how much do I prioritize this versus can I outsource this to my VA? I know there are plenty of people out there who definitely outsource some of that, start doing the research and so forth for sure.
Well, that segues perfectly into my next question, because I would love if you would share about really just more about what you guys do at OFD Consulting and how you work with wedding pros, and how, if any of my listeners, are interested, how could they work with you, and you have multiple offerings. So I would love to hear what the different options are.
You're very kind. So everyone can always find me at OFD Consulting. That's the best way to do it. And, most of our work is through, I mentioned the OFD Collective. That is our membership. It's about 80% of the work that we do. And that's for folks who, they want a publicist in their pocket. We have weekly office hours. We can have individual appointments. We do submission services at certain levels. We work with usually 20 to 25 different article opportunities a month where people can actually chime in. So it's actually like a quoted or a Haro for the wedding industry. So we already do that, and that's been really great as well. For those who want individual training for their team, coaching, we can always talk about that. And then those are the main ways. And then we also offer a couple courses throughout the year. So we'll do actual live group training for submissions as well as wedding industry speaking, which is my other area of specialty. So anyone can just jump over to OFD Consulting and it's all there.
Amazing. I love it. And I saw earlier, I was just like poking around your website because I hadn't been on it in a little bit, but you had a great like newsletter sign up. I'm trying to find it now. It was some great like 5 things to do, or can you
the next hour? Yes.
Love that.
And that's something that we actually recently updated again. And we absolutely love. So it's one of those ones where, it's all these like tips for you to be able to get press in less than an hour. And it's not like a tricky thing. I mean, it actually is things you can do. And so anyone can download. It's a great way. And then what they do is they get in my email list. And so sometimes I have like overflow. Like I just had an article from the Knot today that I needed more sources than we had. And so we asked people to go in and, jump in and try themselves out at that. So it's really a lot of fun.
Amazing. Well, everyone should go sign up for that. That sounds fantastic. I did see that email today, by the way.
Oh, yeah. My clinic's like, help me out, centerpieces. Yeah.
I love it. I know. I was like, oh, if I had more time, I would go jump on that right now. But that's the thing is, just finding the time, prioritizing the time, because it's so easy for our time to just get filled up with all the other things that we have to do. But if we want this to be a priority, which I think it should be, we need to make the time for it. Just set aside, like you said, 20 to 30 minutes a week. Like that's so attainable. We can do that.
100%.
All right, Meghan. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Event Crushed podcast. I hope you found value in this episode, and if you did, please consider sharing it with a wedding industry friend. We also hope you'll consider leaving a rating or review for the show to help other listeners find it. This podcast is edited and produced by Ace Sound Design. If you're looking to elevate your audio experience, their info can be found in the show description. As always, thank you for listening, and please connect with us on Instagram if you haven't already. Now get out there and crush it.